Welcome, everybody, to this 1% Club Roundtable. I thought it would be an interesting one to look at, 7 habits of transformation leaders. Let me share screen and we can get straight into the session today. So, 7 habits of successful transformation leaders. Hopefully you can see that on the screen now. So, as always, why does this matter? Well, I think everyone knows and everyone understands that habits, whether they're good or bad, or positive or negative, can have an absolute profound effect on performance. And certainly, if they're having a profound effect on your performance, the likelihood is that they'll have a profound effect upon your career or your personal success. And they don't just happen. Sorry, they do just happen. If you're not careful and you're not thinking about it consciously, you can very easily fall into bad habits. But equally, if you think about it and consciously focus activity, you can build really great habits. And what we're trying to do today is share the 7 that I think, 7 habits that I think are the foundations on which leaders generally, but those who are operating in change and transformation, should look to embed. Probably got a lot of them already, but hopefully there'll be a few little nuggets that we talk about today that you can start to consider and think about and challenge yourself, really, because one of the key aspects is that continual development aspect. So ultimately, if you are looking to drive change across teams, organizations, you really need to take the control of those habits that will support your career and support that drive towards the outcomes that you're looking for. So let's get into the 7. So number 1 is a habit of being prepared. This sort of 5 Ps, and I think I've cleaned it up a little bit, but proper preparation prevents poor performance. I think there's a slightly ruder connotation around that as well. But it's about being prepared, and it's about looking and thinking about what the activities that you do, what's the likely impact that those activities are going to have on the wider team. And think about them ahead of time, be prepared for those reactions, those responses, and start to plan for risks and identify appropriate mitigating actions. We can all do things, and there's next door's having some work done outside, and there's a drill, so if you can hear lots of background noise, that's what it is. That's the explanation. So if you think about potential risk of a message that you're sending across, think about the mitigating actions, think about the unintended consequences of the actions that you want to take. And the more you can start to think about those and think about them ahead of time and be prepared for reactions or responses from the audience that you're sharing with or trying to take on the journey, the more you'll be able to adapt and respond accordingly, so that you are not creating people that are challenging you all the time. You're actually taking people on that journey that you want them to go ahead. So, think about what the likely consequences are of any actions that you're taking, any communication that you're sharing, and be prepared by building up a whole series of responses. If people respond in this way, if people respond in that way, this is what we'll do, and this is how I will look to adapt or adopt our approach moving forward. So the second one is always listen, and it's one of those where it's obvious, isn't it? Why wouldn't you listen? But all too often, you might find yourself very quickly getting into routine of, you've got a message to get across, or you've got an action plan or a sort of a process that you want to take people through, and you know what it's going to look like, and you know how it's going to flow, and you're focused on the next part of that process as opposed to engaging with the people and the individuals that are present at the time. So actually listening and observing. So listening in the widest context, not just listening to the sounds, but listening and observing what's going on within the group of people that you're working with is absolutely critical. So that's whether that is your direct team, whether it's the wider organisation team, whether it's the key stakeholders, internal, external, or indeed the sponsors, listening to them and really trying to understand the nuances of what they are saying or how they are responding would be a critical habit to adapt. And the 2 ears, 1 mouth, using in that order, that's pretty standard and absolutely critical. But I think it's actually really focusing upon and tuning into the people is the key. So they might say one thing, but if they're saying it in a particular way, or if there's a saying in banking, words and figures differ. If they might be saying one thing, but actually the way that they're saying it and the body language that they're using, actually it's a completely different meaning that they're trying to get across. Observing what's going on and really listening and seeing the responses is critical. And I suppose the other thing to bring out here is be interested, not interesting. Is a key message to take. So the more interested you are in understanding the challenges, the issues, the opportunities that exist within the organisation or the team that you're looking to change, the more engaged the people will be, and you start to be able to take people on that journey. It's a much easier process to do. So number 3. Number 3, be in control. Which is easy to say. Of course, we all want to be in control, but to be in control, you've got to accept that actually there'll be stuff that's out there that happens that you can't control. It's impossible to control absolutely everything. So, how can I at one time say be in control, but then immediately after saying, well, how can we be in control of everything? We can't be in control of everything. But what you can be in control of is the way that you respond to events. So shit happens, stuff happens, external issues happen. Who the hell knew that COVID was going to come back in the sort of second half of 2019 and the whole world changed within 6 months? We didn't know that. So shit happens. But what you can do is control the way that you respond. And the key is to respond rather than react. And we all know the situation. If you react to a certain situation, you tend to react maybe in a negative way, and that starts to germinate and create even bigger issues. But if you step back and think about and consider your response, then you're usually in a much more controlled environment than when you're providing that response. And the simple way of doing that, I found, and I have to say, I have a tendency to fly off and react at times, but as I've got older, that sort of sitting back in almost just that mentally just counting to 10 gives you that time just to actually start to respond in a more constructive way. And when things happen, actually, what I've also found is that at times the best course of action is to say, I don't know how we're going to respond to this. What we're going to have to do is just take a little bit of time to reflect and understand what the consequences are. You don't have to go back with a response immediately or react immediately. Actually giving yourself space to step back and start to think about a more structured way forward will provide you with that much more trust within the team, and will help you in your ability to lead people through that desired change and transformation. Number 4, delegate. As a leader, I think one of the key challenges lots of leaders have as they go through is that you try to keep hold of as much as you can, and you always try to control as much as you can, and in reality you then become you then become the roadblock in any change and transformation. And actually having the capacity and the confidence to delegate as much as you possibly can is an absolute essential skill and an essential habit for any good leader. Because it gives you the opportunity to allow you to focus upon the things that matter. And if you've got everything and you're trying to control everything and get involved in all the nuances and that sort of micromanagement bit that some leaders do, then you can't see the wood for the trees. You can't focus upon the things that really matter because you're getting pulled into the detail of everything. So trust your team, embrace other ways of working, embrace their thoughts about how to get to the desired outcome, and really work on the principle that actually, as a leader, I'm focused upon delivering a specific outcome. I'm not too worried about how I get there, as long as it's delivered against our values, etc., and we're not doing anything that's going to upset the apple cart. I'm not too worried about how to get to the desired outcome, but I want to absolutely focus upon that outcome, and I want to, and I'm happy to delegate and allow my team to get clarity about that desired outcome and allow them to work in the way that they want to work to deliver that desired outcome. So get clarity absolutely on the outcome that you're looking for, and set any expectations that you have about not necessarily how to get there, but what you can, the can do's and the don't do's in terms of the behaviours, etc. That you want your team to operate within, but delegate as much as possible, and that gives you that opportunity to step back, take a helicopter view, and really start to understand and get prepared for risks that are going to happen in the next period. And you, by having that helicopter view, you'll be seen to be a much more forward thinking, and equally by delegating and trusting your team, you'll be seen to be a much better leader. And again, it will help take that team on that journey that you're going through. Number 5, this links to questioning. It links back to the second habit, which was about listening. But once you listen and you're getting stuff, and you're getting feedback, shall I say, from your team or from your stakeholders or from your sponsors, never assume anything. As we were saying earlier, they might be saying one thing, but they're thinking something else. And all too often, if you ask a question or you ask for some feedback, you get a very light version of the real issue. So question and really get into the detail of and peel back the layers of the onion, really, so you can get to the core of the issues, and use that, the 5 whys or a variation of that to really get and understand the situation. So your ability to question and gain the necessary clarification is an essential habit to have. All too often, especially when we are pressured and under a lot of time constraints or budget constraints or whatever, we get sucked into a lot of the detail, but because we're getting sucked into a lot of the detail, we can't actually get deep into the understanding of that detail, and we do it as we just skim across a lot of detail as opposed to going deep into the things that really matter. So the more you can tie all these habits together, delegate, see where the issues are, and then really get into the detail of that. The issues, you'll be able to move things forward a lot quicker. Number 6, be of service. So what do I mean by be of service? I don't know. There's a cracking book by John Timpson, and he talks about upside down management, and I think this is it's an essential skill and it's an essential habit for transformation leaders as well. Our role is not to do. Our role is to ensure that our direct reports have the necessary support, the necessary clarity, everything that they need to support the people that they have within their team, who support the people that have they in their team, that will ultimately, depending on the layers that you're working in, will ultimately, the frontline people who are making the difference have everything that they need to drive that change through. So in Timpson's, the key cutters and the shoe operators, it basically is our gather chart is upside down. He's got customers at the top, and then he's got his frontline staff, and everybody else is about supporting that frontline staff. So the layers of management, their whole role is to focus upon delivering what their team needs to be able to deliver what their team needs to be able to deliver what the customer wants. And I think it's a critical skill that we can build within as a leader of change. Our focus is to be of service to the team, to allow them and to get to provide them with everything that they need to be successful. Because if we're all successful, we'll get to the desired outcome. So focus on the end game and then work back from that in terms of what each element needs to be able to deliver the outcome that we're looking for. And finally, number 7, never stop learning. There's I put there. We've all seen, and we've all probably worked with individuals that they think we know everything about everything. And what did we think about them? We didn't like them, really, did we? They were that sort of know-all. We tried to avoid them. But it's easy to become one of those types of people. The more experience that you've got, you're in a situation, and it's so easy to say, "Oh yeah, well, this is how we dealt with it there. This is how we dealt with it there, and we should be doing it this way." Fine to have that experience, but it's the positioning of that experience. It's not, this is the way that we're going to do it because that's what we've always done. This is what's happened in the past. These are ideas that we can potentially use. But what else is out there? Innovation is quick. Innovation is moving quicker than it's ever moved. There's so much new stuff that's being released day in, day out. Yeah. So just because something happened last week, last month, last year, and made a difference, actually that might not be the best course of action today. So let's keep in mind our experience and knowledge, because that's what people are buying, but let's not assume that we know everything. Let's open it up and engage with people, and continue to learn from other people. So yeah, provide guidance, but don't direct, I suppose, is the key, until we know for certain that we are using the best option available. And that could be something completely new that we've not done before because of an innovative solution that's come out. So push yourself to excel, push yourself to continually learn new ways of working, new technologies, new approaches, test things out. Don't get caught up in the status quo. So those are the 7 habits. I'm more than happy to open it up. Before I do, just one thing. I've mentioned a few times over the weeks that we have started to have a program in place to help people who are transitioning into building and scaling consulting business. We're running a new cohort from, we're going to do a launch event on the 14th, 15th, can't remember, of October. We call it a 90-day challenge. And within that 90-day challenge, we're going to go through these 5 areas. So getting your head in the right place, getting your one thing, really clarity on your focus, building out your business plan, and then building out the business and social machines. So if you are that type of person that thinks that actually consulting business could be for you, touch base with me afterwards and we can go in a lot more detail about this. Or if you know someone who's in that mindset and feels that they could do with some support, help, guidance, accountability over the next 90 days to get the foundations in place. Again, please feel free to introduce them to me and I can go into a lot more detail about what we're planning. So let me stop sharing and open it up to the floor. What's your first thoughts on those 7 habits? Or maybe have we missed some? Are there other habits that you think are more important than the 7 that we've raised today?
I think I definitely worked to all of those. And in addition to the always listen, I think I'd throw in that empathy. And as an example, I was brought in to rescue a stalled program. And one of the things I was told was to give a particular person a wide berth because they were very awkward. And, you just don't go and talk to them. So he was the first guy that I went and spoke to. And as it transpires, nobody had bothered to listen to him before. The changes that were being brought about in this particular business were going to have a massive potential impact on his staff. So there was a lot of concern. And I must admit, he was a guy that, why say in 10 words when you can say in 1,000? So he would go on and on and on and on and on. But at the end, he would have a valid point. The upshot of that was that I managed to convince him that these changes weren't necessarily going to have negative impact on his part of the business. And in fact, his support in this change would be very positive. And his staff worked with me on this. They became champions for the change. And they were really key in delivering that change because of the knowledge and expertise that they had. So why the heck they were never consulted before, I don't know. But I would say, empathy and stuff. And the other thing, I guess, is communication as well, because we've all got a bad habit of talking in tech speak. That means nothing to the people that we're dealing with. I did some stuff in Buckingham Palace once, and at the end of the meetings, I'd always get this thing, oh, Bob, can you stay behind? We've got some things to ask you. What that meant was we haven't got a clue what they were talking about. So can you put it in simple and plain English, please, what this was all about? So, I guess communication as well.
It's two great points there, Rob. So, Neil, was it you?
That leads on to one that I think, don't be afraid to ask the stupid questions, because coming out of meetings so many times, if I'd asked what I thought was a stupid question, it got to the stage where so many people were saying, "Oh, I'm really glad you asked that." And so there really are no stupid questions. So don't be afraid of just pitching in and saying, "Sorry, I don't follow you there." So
that's true. That's true, Neil. I mean, I've sat in meetings when and I know the answer, but somebody said something, and I've looked around the room and you can see lots of blank faces. So I've asked the question for them. Like you say, you can see the relief on their faces.
Unfortunately, Robert, if you say something with enough conviction, people believe you, even though it's absolute bullshit. I've seen people do that, and next meeting they've gone completely back on what they said, but they said it with conviction. Yeah, and they've just contradicted themselves. But people believe them, and they don't seem to pick it up because they said it with absolute conviction. So I
think that's one of the advantages, that even if you are an employed position and not an external, having that external perspective when you're going into a situation, and I call them the numpty questions. It's a Scottish term. It's just go in and ask all the numpty questions and don't assume anything. Because as you've just said, Neil, the more numpty questions you ask, the more light is thrown onto the challenge or the issues that people are facing, because they've avoided asking the questions themselves. And it's then going back to that other one of the habits that we've just mentioned about, don't just take the first answer, dig deeper, because it's usually the third or fourth response that actually get to the real issue or the real nub of the challenge ahead, rather than the first response. And those 5 whys is a you've got to do it. I think you've got to do it in the right way, but that approach is really successful in just getting people to really understand the reason why we're in a situation that we're in and what needs to happen moving forward. Any other thoughts?
Hi everyone, Fabrizio here. I don't know if you guys already know each other, or first time I'm attending here. Tony, thanks for inviting me. I am a transformation director. I work for a private equity group, and I'm sort of work within the group. So not in a consulting or contracting sort of situation, which has its advantages and disadvantages, I guess. I find one of the things for any program that I walk into is to sit with the most influential person in terms of, is it the top investor? Is it the top sort of shareholder? Is it the definitely the CEO, the chairman, and get a very good understanding of why we're doing any change program? Because oftentimes I find I'll go around the business and people don't have a clue why we're doing that. And the leaders who are in the business, they can't articulate it. They're probably very busy doing their jobs, and when a business needs change, the situation is even more difficult for them because they're probably overworking and don't have time to breathe. So you got to go around and articulate that very clear. It's like, this is what we're doing this. And oftentimes, I remember my first lecture of project management, which stuck in my mind. It's like, first thing you do with the project is try to kill it. So whenever I'm talking to an investor or a chairman or a CEO, it's like, do you really want to do this? Do you really consider all the possibilities, all the implications, all the, and try to scale it down as much as possible. And back to one of your points earlier, Tony, is to focus and work on the things that are really hard and need to be changed. I think a lot of change programs they tend to drift into a very cosmetic mode because it's the easier thing to do. And people will say, right, we've got 40 things to do. We do the 38 that are easy, and we're going to leave the 2 hard ones because that tells us we did 99% of the project, but you didn't really. So yeah, I find it.
It's interesting for Bitsy. I think it reminds me of way back when I was in the bank, and the chief exec came in, a new chief exec came in, and after doing his sort of 90-day, 100-day sort of tour to understand what was going on, he got the sort of senior team together and said, right, okay, we're stopping all of these projects. And it was this sort of one line that he said that stuck with me for 25, 30 years. He says, we've got more pilots going on in this place than the RAF have. And it's like that was what it was. There were so many little things that were happening that actually were conflicting with each other. It's like, let's just stop and let's get a grip on the top 10. And all our energies will go on the top 10. And until those 10, until each one of those is completed, there's not going to be another one. We never go and run more than 10 initiatives at any one time across the bank. And suddenly, everybody within the bank got clarity about what was happening, got clarity about what the focus was, and got the necessary support in guidance and budget to deliver. So, over the next 2 to 3 years, significantly more got delivered, and the change got delivered, and the outcomes got delivered, far greater than they'd ever done in the past 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. And it forces you to focus on the difficult things, right? Because it's the hard things that really move the dial.
Yeah.
And people, that's one habit that you need to nurture within you and your team, right? There's a book I read recently, Extreme Ownership. If you guys came across that book, it was written by a couple of Navy SEALs that left the forces and they do leadership consulting in corporate America. And there's a phrase he uses. It says, when everybody's running away from the bullets, we're running towards them. And I always say that to my team. It's like, I don't want anyone here running away from the problems. I want to get right in, understand why it's happening, and be able to explain and articulate so that we can find a solution for it. And I find it's often that kind of pockets in the business that nobody wants to touch because they're too hot, they're too hard to address.
Or the ability to say no. If you address it and you think, we really shouldn't be doing that, you've got to be able to say no as well. So you don't just find solutions because you can. You've got to, if you find solutions and just not viable, then you've got to say no. So you are running towards the bullets, but sometimes you think, no, we'll back off from this one because
We can't win it.
Yeah, and it's not
Yeah.
the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it becomes the decision of like, are we in the right market? Are we chasing the right sort of, are we serving the right product? Are we, and then sometimes you discover things like, well, this product is completely inviable. It's making us money. But there's a lot of people whose job depend on that, and they would never say that. They would never articulate that, right? So it's a very, very challenging position. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of programs I've been involved in have been around efficiencies and driving efficiencies within organisations, and all too often when you start to look at the value chain, the end-to-end processes, stuff has started to happen because people have created a workaround because they've run away from the issue. They've never really got into resolving the issue, so they've created this workaround. And actually, if you strip out all those workarounds and resolve the issue, things become a lot easier and a lot quicker and a lot more efficient. And I would say probably 90% of programs that I've worked on with that focus, it's just stripping back all the stuff that people have added in because they've not wanted to resolve the main issue. Is what's delivered the maximum value. So any other points or thoughts on the 7, or indeed any others that you feel are that we've missed out?
I'd only add one thing in, Stephen. I've been doing a bit of reading and was part of a webinar yesterday looking at generational differences in businesses. Because I think for the first time we're in a position now where you've got 4 generations of the workplace, and we're probably going to end up with 5 generations in the workplace quite soon. And it was intriguing going through the perspectives of baby boomers. I think most of us are probably boomers, and then you've got Generation Z, Generation X, the in-betweeners, and the different perspectives, and being able to leverage within your teams the strengths of each of those. So you've got the kids now who, 9/11 is an historical event. They don't remember it. They've had mobile phones since they were 8. They're teaching us technology, and being able to leverage the in-betweeners who aren't quite sure and are looking at work and do already want to be like my dad. And being able to pair up the right people and those different perspectives of the same problems. And not being dismissive of it, And then millennials aren't lazy people; they're in the 40s now.
You're right, and I think it is, isn't it? It's about blending those different generations together, because we can all bring stuff to the party. I was talking to someone the other day, and they were saying that they're getting involved in a lot of new innovations. People are coming up because it's relatively easy these days, if you've got an idea, to get the funding in place to develop a technology solution in particular. So there's lots of innovations, there's lots of ideas, and they get into the stage of creating minimum viable products and finding there's a market, but and in some cases massive market opportunities, and then it's, oh, what do I do now? Because my whole focus has been on this creating whatever it is. I now need to scale a business, and I now need to understand how to bring people in. I need to then understand how do I manage people, and I need to understand the structures, and that's where you need these people with the ideas, but equally they then need people that have got the experience of growing and scaling businesses. And I think that's where there's some interesting challenges that lie ahead, because sometimes the stuff that's made, the approach that's made the idea come to fruition, then won't necessarily, those skills are not necessarily the same skills that allow it to really thrive in the marketplace. And the conversation I was having the other day was just about that. How can you actually start to bring the different experiences together to leverage the opportunities that these ideas and these innovations bring?
Yeah, very much so. I think it'd be intriguing to see how some of the businesses learn to manage workforces, and therefore what challenges and changes happen. You one communication, the old style of HR comms, everybody gets the same thing. Doesn't really cut it now, because the youngsters will ask all questions. So why do I need to do that? I'm not, they don't accept things in the same way as maybe some of us did in our early days. Just because you're part of a company doesn't mean the company's always right, because the kids will challenge. They can go out on TikTok. Why can't I talk to the CEO and tell him this product's crap? That's what they do outside work, and it's balancing those things. So I'm just going to say on the last point, if you're interested in some of the detail of that, I recommend you check out a lady called Eliza Philby, elizaphilby.com. She's a commentator. She's worked with many different businesses, government, whatever. Go and check her out. It's really interesting research.
Brilliant. Eliza Philby, did you say?
Yeah, I'll stick it in the chat.
Yeah, pop in the chat, please. Great thing. I think I was just thinking here, Steve. Very, very, very interesting. You brought that up, because that's been one of the things that's been more of a recent challenge for us, right? To deal, particularly when you're talking about change, right? Because change will impact different people in different ways, at different stages of their career. So it means something completely different for each person. For some of the young people, it could be an opportunity. This one way to sell it to them. I find that for us in change roles, we have a great excuse, a very good vantage point where we can go and talk to anyone in the business. It's like, look, I'm working on a project and I need a bit of your insight here. And I use that quite a lot to basically go and figure out what particular team's doing, how that little tribe works, how that. And I think one of the things that I noticed that is most fundamental is to the point you were making about the sort of unified comms and that hierarchy structure that we grew up used to, that doesn't exist in the minds of the younger people. Even though you can have an org chart and everything, it doesn't function that way for them. For them, it works in terms of tribes, it works in terms of their social network, and it works in terms of who has an influence in them. So I again is one of the responsibilities that I find sort of drifting towards our role is one, to hold the business accountable to that sort of commercial rigor. Tony, you were talking about the difficulties in transforming a brilliant idea into a scalable, viable business. Massive challenge. That's what our private equity group does. Blam Chocolate. We scale businesses. We start them at very early stage, very seed stage, and to scale is a huge challenge, because you've got a bunch of creative people, and you need to set some sort of order there without killing the creativity.
Yeah, exactly.
But you need to bring commercial rigor there, and you need to do that in a more sort of social networking fashion, and it's kind of walking the floor. For me, it's more important than ever to really walk the floor and get down with the different teams and sit down with the kids, in the cafeteria, have lunch with them and see what's going on in their minds. And it's like, challenge them back with, okay, how does that link to value? How's that creating value to the business? How can we pare that down and get it into an MVP, get that big project, that great idea, and say, how do we test the waters with this much investment, and then get them thinking into that? Because I think we have a lot to impart in terms of commercial rigor and viability of businesses. We're running into a big recession. You're well aware of this, and we've seen signs already. And part of that is because there hasn't been a real check into those kind of business models, and and we're going to pay the price for it. Everybody will.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. So we are just after 15:15. So happy to stay on if we've got other topics to discuss, but we did say that we'd close at 10:15. So if there's nothing else, then we'll call it a day. Just one thing from myself, we're running a webinar tomorrow. Brendan De Cruz is doing a session on transformation, but it's completely gone out of my head what it's called. Can't remember, but at 9:30.
Brendan, isn't it, on responsible?
Brendan, yeah, that's it, responsible transformation. So if you're around tomorrow at 9:30 to 10:30, Brendan's going to run a session on responsible transformation for his experience working with non-for-profits and charities, etc., and the lessons that he's learned from that. So, if you're around, come along. But if not, then hopefully we'll see you next week on the next roundtable. Thanks a lot for your time.